Alaric Simon, FIS 201, and this is my plan for systemic racism innovative intervention. I want to start off reading a quote from Haile Selassie's address to the UN and a excerpt taken from Bob Marley's song War. That until there is no longer first-class and second-class citizens of any nation, until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes. That leads me for the discussion on how to address systemic racism in education. It requires a multifaceted approach that includes both structural changes and innovative intervention. Here are examples of innovation intervention that could be considered. 1. Diversifying the curriculum. One innovative intervention is to incorporate a more diverse curriculum that reflects the history and experiences of marginalized communities that could involve adding materials and resources that highlight the contributions and experiences of underrepresented groups in history, literature, science, and other subjects. Number 2, cultural responsive teaching. Cultural responsive teaching involves taking into account the cultural backgrounds, experiences, and learning styles of students in the classroom. This approach can help to create a more inclusive and supportive learning environment for students of all backgrounds. Teacher training. Number 3. Providing professional development and training for teachers on topics related to equity, diversity, and inclusion can help to create a more informed and culturally competent teaching workforce. Number 4, mentoring the role models. Connecting students with mentors and role models from diverse backgrounds can help to inspire and motivate students, especially those who may feel marginalized or disconnected from the school community. Number 5, parent and community engagement. Engaging parents and community members in the education process can help to build stronger relationships between schools and the community. This can involve creating opportunities for parents and community members to be involved in school activities and decision-making processes. Number 6, digital learning. Incorporating digital learning tools and resources can help to provide greater access to educational materials for students from diverse backgrounds who may not have access to traditional resources. These are just a few examples of innovative interventions that could be considered to address systemic racism in education. It's important to note that no single intervention is a silver bullet, and a comprehensive approach that addresses multiple aspects of systemic racism in education is needed. The perception of these methods of intervention can vary among different groups depending on their individual beliefs, experiences, and values. Here are some examples of how different groups might perceive these interventions. Number 1, marginalized communities who have historically been impacted by systemic racism may be more likely to view these interventions positively. They may see these interventions as steps towards creating a more inclusive and equitable educational system that recognizes and values their experiences and contributions. Number two, advocacy groups that focus on issues related to equity, diversity, and inclusion may also view these interventions positively. They may see them as critical steps towards addressing the structural and institutional barriers that have contributed to systemic racism in education. Opponents of equity, number three, and inclusion may view these interventions as threats to the existing educational system and may argue that they promote political correctness or reverse discrimination. Number four, traditionalists. Some people who have a more traditional view of education may view these interventions as unnecessary or even harmful. They may argue that incorporating more diverse curriculum, for example, takes away from the traditional educational goals of teaching core academic subjects. Number five, teachers and administrators. Teachers and administrators may view these interventions differently depending on their own personal experiences and beliefs. Some may embrace these interventions as important steps towards creating a more inclusive and supportive learning environment, while others may be more resistant to change and see them as a burdensome or unnecessary. It's important to note that there is no monolithic group that holds a single perspective on these interventions. It's important to engage in ongoing dialogue with a range of stakeholders to understand their perspective and work collaboratively towards creating a more inclusive and equitable educational system. In order to make a difference and create lasting change, the observed innovative interventions for addressing systemic racism must be implemented in a way that is sustained over time and embedded in the educational system. Here are some ways in which these interventions can be used to change the point of view for the future on a deeper level. Number one, normalizing inclusive practices. By consistently integrating more diverse and inclusive practices into the educational system, these practices can become the norm rather than the exception. This can help to create a culture of inclusivity that is embraced by educators, students, and the broader community. Number two, building empathy and understanding. By incorporating materials and resources that highlight the experiences and perspectives of marginalized communities, students can develop a greater sense of empathy and understanding towards people from different backgrounds. This can help to break down stereotypes and prejudices and promote a more inclusive and tolerant society. Number three, empowering marginalized communities. By giving voice and visibility to marginalized communities, innovative interventions can help to empower these communities and promote a sense of agency and empowerment. This can help to create a more equitable and just society where all individuals are able to participate fully and equally. Number four, fostering critical thinking and analysis. By incorporating more diverse perspectives and materials, innovative interventions can help to foster critical thinking and analysis among students. This can help students to better understand the historical and societal and social context of systemic racism and develop the skills to analyze and challenge systems of oppression. Number 5, creating long-term change. By embedding innovative interventions into the educational system, these interventions can have a lasting impact that extends beyond the current generations of students. This can help to create a future where a systemic racism is no longer accepted or tolerated, and where all individuals are able to participate fully and equally in society. Overall, making a difference and changing the point of view for the future on a deeper level requires a sustained and comprehensive approach that addresses multiple aspects of systemic racism in education. By embedding innovative interventions into the educational system, we can create a more inclusive and equitable future for all individuals. A good strategy from a grassroots perspective for implementing an innovative intervention to address systemic racism in education would involve the following steps. Community organizing. The first step would be to build a coalition of individuals and organizations who are committed to promoting equity and inclusion in education. This could involve reaching out to local advocacy groups, faith-based organizations, parent teacher associations, and other community groups. Number 2, identify the issue. The next step would be to identify a specific issue or area of focus that the grassroots organization wants to address. For example, this could involve advocating for the inclusion of more diverse curriculum, addressing racial disparities or in discipline, or increasing teacher diversity. Number 3, develop a plan. Once the issue has been identified, the grassroots organization should develop a detailed plan for how they will address it. This could involve conducting research on best practices, engaging with stakeholders to build support, and developing a strategy for how to implement the intervention. Number 4, build support. The next step would be to build support for the intervention among key stakeholders, including educators, parents, students, and policymakers. This could involve holding community meetings, hosting informational sessions, and building relationships with key decision makers. Number 5, implementation. Once there is enough support for the intervention, the grassroots organization should begin to implement it. This could involve piloting the intervention in a single school or classroom and evaluating its effectiveness. If it is successful, the intervention can be scaled up to reach more students and schools. Number 6, evaluation and improvement. Finally, it is important to continually evaluate and improve the intervention to ensure that it is having the intended impact. This could involve collecting data on student outcomes, soliciting feedback from stakeholders, and making adjustments as necessary. In summary, a grassroots strategy for implementing an innovative intervention to address systemic racism in education involves building a coalition of stakeholders, identifying an issue, developing a plan, building support, implementing the intervention, and continually evaluating and improving it. By following these steps, grassroots organizations can bring their innovative ideals to life and create lasting change in the education system. Thank you.